Great. Thanks, everyone. And welcome to our meeting number 24 of the Environmental Justice Council. Before we get started, I will turn it over to ERG, our partners who help make every meeting happen, and they will provide a review of the logistics and interpretation, language interpretation support.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Kessel, and I'm with ERG, a contractor supporting this meeting. First, we're going to go over some virtual language logistics. This presentation is available with virtual interpretation into Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Cape Verdean Creole, Vietnamese, Mandarin, and American Sign Language, or ASL. Now, our interpreters are going to go over this in their own languages.
Hello, everyone. To participate in English, click the interpretation icon and select English. Portuguese, please.
Para entrar no canal em português, clique no ícone Interpretation e selecione Português.
Spanish, please.
Si alguien desea interpretación en español, haga clic en Interpretation y seleccione Spanish.
Thank you. Cape Verdean Creole, please.
Para participar na crioulo, clica na ícone Interpretation e seleciona Cape Verdean Creole.
Haitian Creole, please.
Pour entrer dans channel créole haïtien, cliquez sur l'icône interprétation et puis choisissez Haitian Creole. Thank you.
Thank you. Mandarin, please.
如果以普通话参加会议，请点击口语图标并选择中文，谢谢。
Thank you. Vietnamese, please.
Để vào game bằng tiếng Việt, hãy nhấp vào biểu tượng Interpretation và chọn Vietnamese.
Thank you. Language announcement completed.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start interpretation. Okay, a little globe icon should have popped up in your Zoom control panel. Attendees should click on this icon and select your preferred language. English speakers should select English so they can hear any translated comments. If you're a virtual attendee and would like to use the telephone audio for this meeting, please click on the small arrow next to the microphone icon, select Switch to Phone Audio, and follow the directions provided. If you're using ASL during this meeting, our ASL interpreters will be spotlighted. You can also pin them to your screen by clicking on the three dots next to their video and going to pin. Closed captioning is available for this meeting. You should be able to turn on closed captioning by clicking on the CC icon in your Zoom control panel. If for whatever reason you don't see either the CC icon or the interpretation icon, you can click on More, indicated by three dots, and a little menu will pop up, and closed captioning and interpretation should be there. If you're having any technical issues, you can send an email to meetings@erg.com and we'll help you troubleshoot. You can also put something into the meeting chat. If you'd like a translated version of the presentation slides, please go to the Environmental Justice Council website at the link in the chat. Just so everyone knows, this meeting is being recorded and will later be available for viewing through a link that will be on the same website. You can submit questions through the Q&A box. If you would like to make a comment, we have time allotted during the public comment session. Please wait for this time to make comments. During this session, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon in your Zoom control panel and wait to be called on. If you're commenting in another language, please speak into your language room and your interpreter will translate the comments into English. Or again, you can type them into the Q&A box and I can read it aloud. Please keep any verbal comments to under 2 minutes to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. For all speakers today, please speak slowly to accommodate the interpreters. Please use simple language and minimize the use of acronyms. I would like to remind council members to only use the chat function for meeting logistics and no other communication, in accordance with open meeting law. We'd also like to ask all council members to leave their cameras on for the whole meeting. All right, that's all I have for logistics. So I'm now going to turn it back over to Maria Belen.
Thank you, Kessel. And I was going to go through the agenda. However, I do want to acknowledge and welcome President Jonathan Jefferson of Roxbury Community College, who has joined us and will provide some welcoming remarks. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you for joining us tonight.
So I have a few remarks to share with you this evening. First of all, good morning, members of the Massachusetts Environmental Justice Council, distinguished guests, partners, and local leaders. It is an honor to welcome you to Roxbury Community College, an institution deeply committed to educational excellence, community empowerment, and environmental stewardship. At Roxbury Community College, we believe that sustainability is more than a goal. It is the responsibility we actively embrace for our students, our neighbors, and the generations to come. The Massachusetts Clean Energy and Climate Plan for 2025 and 2030 charts an urgent course for deep decarbonization across our Commonwealth, guiding emissions reductions, advancing clean energy deployment, and enhancing resilience in every community. This plan represents not just targets, but a bold framework for action that fuels healthier neighborhoods, equitable economic opportunity, and climate justice for all citizens. Here at RCC, that vision resonates profoundly with our mission and our ongoing transformation. Our Roxbury 2030 strategic plan, built around purpose, people, place, programs, and partnerships, solidifies the sustainability and equitable opportunity as the pillars of our institutional identity. Through our objectives and goals in place, we are committed to transforming our campus, both in person and online, into a resilient, compliant, and inclusive space equipped with best-in-class smart infrastructure. The strategic plan was developed with input from industry experts and to build on the strong foundation in place when I began my tenure as president in July of 2024. I want to thank my predecessors and the RCC community for their longstanding commitment to clean energy, climate resiliency, and environmental justice by reminding you briefly of the excellent work recently completed or underway. As a part of the 2016 to 2017 major campus revisions, which included $23 million for a clean energy project, RCC partnered with Ameresco to install geothermal systems and a solar canopy, which now produces annually CO2 emissions, which reduces annual CO2 emissions by over 5.6 million pounds and has cut energy costs significantly. This leading by example approach has earned recognition from state leaders and underscores our belief that institutions can be active contributors, not just spectators, in building a clean energy economy. We are also expanding academic and workforce pathways in clean energy and climate tech. Earlier this week, the Massachusetts Board of Higher Ed formally approved a new associate's degree in smart building technology, positioning RCC to be the only community college in Massachusetts to offer this degree beginning this fall. For the past 5 years, RCC Center for Smart Building Technology has offered non-credit certificate training that leads to immediate employment in clean and green energy fields. In November, we celebrated the graduation of the inaugural class of the Smart Building Technology System Smart Building Technology Program. 7 graduates completed the intensive 450-hour non-credit certificate program, which equips participants with the technical skills needed to build, install, manage, and repair automation systems. Graduates are prepared for positions starting at $70,000 annually, with the potential to earn up to $150,000 within 5 years. These initiatives reflect our strategic focus on programs that equip students with real-world skills and partnerships that amplify impact, whether through industry collaboration, civic organizations, or policy leaders. I hope that all of you will continue to partner with RCC and encourage residents to attend our programs for training and careers that promote a cleaner, greener environment and provide an efficient path to economic mobility. Thank you for convening here, for your leadership in advancing environmental justice, and for your partnership in shaping a cleaner, more equitable Massachusetts. I look forward to seeing you again on campus soon. Thank you so very much for allowing me to give these remarks this evening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jefferson. Thank you for joining us. Now I will go through the agenda. We had planned to present a draft process regarding how communities can petition to become an environmental justice population. However, we had to postpone the agenda item for our next meeting, which will be in April, and it is planned to be in Orange, Massachusetts. But we do remain committed and will present a plan on how, or we'll present an idea of how we're thinking about the criteria for requesting to be an environmental justice population. The agenda for tonight is mainly it will be the Clean Energy and Climate Plan from our colleagues at EEA. We will have public comment before and after, and we will adjourn and go through next steps. Or go through next steps and then adjourn. If there are there any local, state, or federal elected officials? Doesn't look like there is. And now I will turn it over to Kessel again, to my colleagues at ERG to help us go through the roll call. I will share that we have welcomed our new Environmental Justice Counsel, Paula Garcia, who is here, and Dr. Harleen Marwa. However, Dr. Harleen Marwa was not able to join us today, so she will join us at our next meeting. But I would like to have Paula introduce herself to the council and to the public, if you would like, Paula.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Paula Garcia, she, her, ella pronouns, and I am the Senior Manager of Energy Justice Research and Policy with the Union of Concerned Scientists. I have worked with the Union of Concerned Scientists, or UCS, for more than 11 years. A lot of my work is focused on Massachusetts. I lead our energy work in Massachusetts, actually, and I'm very happy to be here with you all today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paula. And now I will turn it to ERG to help us with roll call.
Sure.
Perfect timing, Lydia.
So we'll start with roll call for quorum. And I'd like to remind everyone to respond verbally. Marcos Luna.
Here.
Kalila Barnett.
Hello.
Lydia Lau.
Here.
Jen Salonetti.
Here.
Madeline Fraser Cook.
Here.
Cheryl Hawley. I see you online, Cheryl, but I can't hear you if you're present.
Here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Caroline Hahn.
Here.
Sophia Owen. Here. Paula Garcia.
Here.
Melissa Ferretti.
Here.
Patricia Spence.
Present.
Peter Matthey. Miles Gresham.
Here.
Harleen Marwa. And Maria Belen Power.
Present.
All right, with 12 present, we have quorum.
Thank you. And now I would like to proceed to the approval of the meeting minutes from December, meeting number 23. So if I could get a motion to approve the minutes.
Melissa Ferretti, I make a motion to approve. Makes a second.
Great. Thank you. Any discussion of the minutes? I will now pass it to Kessel to help us, or Sophia, with the roll call.
You're great to say mother of 3 children, biggest trap.
Sorry. I will now ask for approval, opposition or abstaining from the approval of the minutes. Marcos Luna. Kalila Barnett.
I'm abstaining because I was not present for that meeting.
Thank you. Lydia Lau. Approve. Jen Salonetti.
Abstaining, I was not present.
All right. Madeline Fraser Cook.
Approve.
Cheryl Hawley.
I approve.
Caroline Hahn.
Approve.
Sophia Owen.
Also abstaining because I wasn't present.
All right. Paula Garcia.
I'm abstaining. This is my first meeting with the EJ
Melissa Ferretti.
I approve.
All right. Patricia Spence.
Approved.
Peter Matthey. Okay. Miles Gresham.
Abstaining as I was not present.
All right. Harleen Marois. Is not here. And Maria Belen.
Approve.
All right. So we have 8 approval, which is quorum.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to public comment, which we do at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting as well. And I will again call ERG to go through the logistics of public comment.
Thank you. For our attendees, if you're speaking in another language, you can raise your hand. And once you are unmuted, you can speak into your language room. This is for online speakers. The interpreter will translate what you say into the English room. You can also submit written comments through the Q&A box, and we will read them aloud. Please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Finally, I'd like to remind everyone to speak slowly for our interpreters and to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less so everyone has a chance to speak. If you're in the room, you can raise your hand and we can either bring you a microphone or you can go up to the podium to make your comment. And with that, I'll open the floor to comments. I see we have a few hands up online.
Gonna go through the ones online.
Yes. Kessel, are you able to promote people?
Yes, Catherine Rodriguez, you should be able to unmute yourself and talk.
Hello? Thank
Hello.
you. Hi, I'm here tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of grassroots. We live in an environmental justice zone here in Taunton. And back on February 6th, I believe, we sent a letter or an email just seeing if we could get a letter of support. We're going before the zoning board here in Taunton, and we're not having any luck. We're in an environmental justice zone with a large concrete batch plant that is in the midst of our zone, which is why we're in one. Across the street, we have elderly disabled housing. And for us, this isn't some kind of policy issue. This is our lives. Our kids are breathing in the dust. They walk to school at the bus stop, which is at the entrance of this concrete plant. And we watch these 18-wheelers whip around the corner. You know, they have the diesel fumes. We have the dust in the air. It's a constant worry about the long-term exposure. You know, our neighbors have our kids have asthma. Neighbors have lung cancer, COPD, and they want to expand this plant. And we're worried and we're trying to do what we can, but the city keeps putting us off. We've gone to a meeting every month for the last year. It's the attrition. They keep putting us off. We just would like to know if maybe we could have a short acknowledgement, a guidance, any kind of statement of support that would affirm, you know, what we already know, that we believe our neighborhood deserves the same protection and attention as any other neighborhood. It's urgent. I mean, your voice carries influence that ours alone does not. I keep saying, as many of these meetings as we go to in our city, we have no credibility. If they always prioritize profit over our health. And I believe we have a dangerous and serious public health situation. Any kind of show of support. As a matter of fact, if anybody hears this, the ZBA hearing is in Taunton City Hall, 6 p.m. on February 26th. And once again, we'll go and we'll try, but we're looking for any help. It's like we have no voice in our own community. So I want to thank you for listening and the work that you do. And we're hoping somebody out there hears us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Jordan Woolman. You should be able to unmute yourself and talk.
Hi, yes. Thank you so much for holding this meeting tonight. I was actually just wondering if anyone on the council or the undersecretary could speak to when we might expect to see the annual EJ report that I believe is required to be filed each year. I know the state laid out the EJ strategy in 2024, but I don't think we've yet seen the EJ report released this year to account for 2025. So was just wondering if anyone could address that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. We can definitely follow up. If you can put your email or your phone number in the chat, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Kristen Mello. Kristen, you should be able to unmute yourself and talk.
Thank you so much, and thank you for holding this meeting. I was very glad to hear that the next meeting will include information about how communities can petition for EJ status. I'm a city councilor here in Westfield, and we have a community that has submitted a petition for EJ status almost a year ago. And we're still looking for some guidance there as we come up on the regulations for the Climate Act. We're looking at changes in July and this cumulative impact mass enviro tool. And what we're finding is that small clusters of neighborhoods in geographically large census block groups are going to carry a ton of environmental burden. And we have also found that these battery storage facilities are full of PFAS. And since Westfield has already had our water contaminated with PFAS, 41,000 people poisoned with it, we are very susceptible to more PFAS contamination. And one Moss Landing fire here would wipe us out. And these neighborhoods have no protection now, even though we'd asked for it over a year ago, and we began communicating with the EJ office in January of 2023 about this. So as we come up, as the public comment periods close and the CIA, comment period closes tomorrow, we are very concerned that these very vulnerable neighborhoods are going to be even more greatly impacted. And it feels like the state is just rolling over us, and they say that you can petition, but we can't. We have, and nothing has happened. And now there's an option to petition to have the cumulative impact analysis done, but we don't have a process for that either. And so as an elected official, I am asking the council to please address this as soon as possible before these regulations are enacted. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, like I mentioned, we will talk about how we are thinking about the petition for EJ population. It is allowed, but we don't have a process, so we will be touching on that in the next meeting in April. And the process to petition a CIA, the regulations have not been finalized, so that process has not been finalized, for lack of a better word. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is everyone who has raised their hands online.
It looks like we have two folks in person who would like to speak.
And we will just hold up time cards back here to help you stay under 2 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Kate Phelps. I'm a member of the Franklin Park Defenders. And our concern, as ever, is how to protect this most valuable parkland in an area that is also an environmental justice area. And as many people know, the Shattuck Hospital plan that was put forward by the Boston Medical Center has been withdrawn because the idea of having a 851 unit construction there for people suffering from substance abuse disorder was deemed unacceptable, both from financial in terms of community feedback. We're asking this group if they would keep an eye on not just furthering future environmental goals, but protecting what we already have. And to that end, there will be the first stage of a community-led process, which our local representatives are supporting us with, to speak to the state about what the community might like to see there, not just what we want to see. And it could be, you know, senior housing or smaller construction. It could be a swimming pool. It could be reverting the land back to part of Franklin Park, open and available to the community that uses the park. And so that's our ask. Our first public meeting is going to be next Wednesday night, February the 18th, at the Luna Park Community Center in Mattapan. And so 15 seconds, that's the ask. Let's protect what we've got. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Freeman from JP, Jamaica Plain, sorry, a part of Boston. And kind of piggybacking on what the previous commenter was talking about, Franklin Park, right in the heart of Boston, the cornerstone of the Emerald Necklace, and a place of such value to the populations around it, the escape from all the urban noise and stress and traffic. You're in a park, and there's been, unfortunately, the White Stadium project, which has way more than 2 minutes need to talk about, but the Franklin Park Defenders have put together some fact sheets that I would like to leave a copy here. And I'm so appreciative that we have environmental justice guidelines and a council and policy, and really want to see how it might apply in a case like this, why so many neighbors feel like they haven't really been heard in this planning, and how to get the best outcome for the park, for the neighborhood, and an appropriate site for a professional soccer team that may or may not be right in the middle of a residential area in a park. So thank you for thinking about it. Who should I leave my one copy?
You can leave it with me. Thank you.
There are other copies if anyone else would like some.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in person that would like to comment? Great. So now we'll turn it over to our presentation, our main activity. So we are joined by my colleague Oleander Stone, Director of Climate Equity and Environmental Justice, who will be presenting with Melissa? With Melissa Middleman. You're going to have to remind me your full title, Melissa.
Assistant Secretary for Decarbonization.
Assistant Secretary for Decarbonization. And so they will be presenting on the Clean Energy and Climate Plan, which is the Commonwealth roadmap for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and achieving net zero by 2050. The plan outlines the strategies across transportation, buildings, electricity, industry, and natural and working lands, with a strong focus on equity and environmental justice. And it serves as a guiding framework for state agencies as we work towards a cleaner, healthier, and more resilient future for all. So now I'll pass it over to Oleander and Melissa.
Everybody, it's nice to be here with you. Thank you so much to Undersecretary Power. Thank you, Jonathan, for all that you've done to make it so this way we can be here. Often I have sat in the audience during your meetings, so it's really a pleasure to be here talking to you a little bit about the work that I do. We're going to do this a little bit differently than we have done than you've experienced other presentations. We are going to present to you a little bit about our work, and then you all are going to experiment going into breakout groups. And you are going to talk on your own about things, questions that we're going to put up here on the slide, and then you're going to come back and share out. This work, doing a breakout group for an open meeting and hybrid with translation, takes a huge amount of work to do. So thank you to Jonathan, thank you to the ERG, sorry, I get lost in that ERG team. Thank you, Undersecretary Power, for all of the things that go into making that happen. So logistically, you all as a table will just move to those back spaces to be in either one breakout table over there or another one over there, and we'll get into some of those logistics. Next slide, please. So I have worked with many of you through the work that I do on the resilience side of the climate team, but here I get to be coming to talk with you from the work that I do with our decarbonization team. Oftentimes when I am talking with community members, I am continually told that our structure within the state is very confusing and that everybody would like an org chart. And so I thought I'd start there with an org chart, so this way you could have a better sense of both where I am working and where this work of the Clean Energy and Climate Plan is coming from. So both Melissa and I, we report to the Undersecretary of Decarbonization and Resilience, Undersecretary Catherine Antos. And Melissa is here as the Assistant Secretary for the decarbonization team, and I work across both the decarbonization and the resilience team. So we are very excited to talk with you. The CECP is a process that is just beginning, the Clean Energy and Climate Plan. Sorry, I can slip into acronyms. Our Clean Energy and Climate Plan is something that we are at the beginning stage of. We are hoping to come to you a few times as this process continues so that you can give your input, we can tell you how we're taking your input, and we can show you what it is that we're doing. So I'm going to pass it to Melissa to start talking a bit about what the Clean Energy and Climate Plan is, and then we'll talk a little bit about the decision-making framework and some of the questions that we have for you all, and then answer any clarifying questions that you have about the content, go into breakout groups, and then come back and share out. So, Melissa, thank you.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Undersecretary Power, Jonathan, the whole team, and the EJ Council for inviting us to speak here tonight. And thank you to Dr. Jefferson and the team at Roxbury Community College for hosting. It's a pleasure to be here. So, as you've heard in some of Undersecretary Power's opening remarks, the Clean Energy and Climate Plan is the state's roadmap to reducing greenhouse gas emissions across the Commonwealth. We do that, one, because we have to, but then two, because we want to. We have to because our legislators set in statute specific emissions reductions that we have to achieve at certain intervals, and to complement those emissions reductions with the publication of a comprehensive, clear, and specific roadmap to achieve those emissions reductions. We also want to do this work so that we can come around every 5 years and ensure that our work continues to be relevant based on the current context. What are the emerging technologies? What are the emerging behavioral adoption patterns? what changes to our communities need to be reflected in the way that we design the emissions reduction strategy in a comprehensive way. And so what we're here to talk about today is that we're starting the 2035 Clean Energy and Climate Plan. It's due on January 1st, 2028, and I laugh when I say that because we started this work about 6 or so months ago internally, and I said we had about 2.5 years left until it was published, and that's quickly waning. It is coming fast. So we want to be in this room talking to you, and as Oleander mentioned, coming back throughout the process to really ensure that your voices are represented and that we're thinking about environmental justice comprehensively. If we advance to the next slide. So we have to follow a rubric with some fairly specific ingredients. We have to explain how we'll meet reductions in specific sectors. So for the electric power sector, transportation, commercial and industrial heating and cooling, as well as residential heating and cooling, industrial processes, and natural gas distribution and service. We have to incorporate considerations around equity, costs, benefits, and a host of other criteria named on the slide. We have to complement these with technological adoption benchmarks so that we can be clear about how we are making progress along the way. We must explain our approach to mitigating impacts on low and moderate income populations and burdened communities. We must adopt goals and set a strategy for the role of our natural and working lands. And then we also must demonstrate clear modeling and analysis behind our pathway and publish those results where feasible. Next slide. So if that is the how of how we have to do it, this is really the what we have to do. And frankly, this is the chart that keeps me up at night because what it's showing are all the different sectors of our economy and actual up to 2020 and then modeled emissions reductions out to 2050 in adherence with our 2050 net zero mandate. What you'll see is the different colored blue segments represent different sectors. So again, transportation, electricity, buildings, non-energy and industrial. And what's most stark is the very steep decline down and to the right. The vertical bars are the preset mandates from our legislature. So in 2025, 2030, and 2040, we have preset mandates as well as the 2050 net zero mandate. And our strategy in the Clean Energy and Climate Plan is now articulating how we will continue to make progress along this curve out to 2035. Next slide, please. So we've spent quite a bit of time doing a lot of setup, speaking to a number of other state peers who have recently developed their climate plans, speaking to a number of energy system modelers, economy-wide energy modelers, decarbonization modelers, thinking about how we want to set up our modeling approach. And I will say the modeling is one part of this effort. There are many different facets of this work, but I do want to highlight some of these features because they're notably different than some of the pathways that we chose in the past. So feature one, we want to be modeling multiple scenarios, including business as usual. This is different because in the prior clean energy and climate plans, we modeled all of our scenarios as attainment scenarios to those prior statutory limits. We want to be able to look at the different pathways to be able to articulate where are we and what action remains to us for us to kind of achieve those ambitious reduction goals. Second, we want to model policy packages. In the past, we've modeled technology deployment, so how many EVs need to be on the road by 2050? How many heat pumps need to be installed in homes? We want to be taking another look at the different actions the state can take at a policy level and how does that actually show up in some of the modeling pathways that we will be looking at and considering. Third, our mandate requires us to assess costs in this study. We want to be taking a look at that from an affordability perspective. What does it mean for different segments of the population of Massachusetts in terms of bill impacts on a monthly basis of the different options for how we will reduce emissions? So if we affect one policy in this sector and another in that sector, how does that actually show up for people on a daily basis in terms of what they see on their monthly energy bill? And lastly, we want to feature uncertainty analysis. One of the challenges that we had in the prior modeling efforts in prior plans is that we developed an incredibly informative model, but we sometimes had challenges adapting it to changing circumstances. We want to really build a flexible, adaptable model so that we can choose multiple pathways and be able to understand how different changes in the deployment of renewables and the change in the federal administration affect our ability to pursue our strategy. So uncertainty analysis is a really key part. And if we hop to the next slide, thank you. So as I mentioned, I started talking about this in 2025. Time is quickly waning, but we've really set our phases into 3 parts. One was the priority setting phase, and we're still wrapping up this work, which is really about setting the plan's principles and context, onboarding a consultant team, refining the modeling methodology that I just went through, refining a decision-making criteria that Oleander is going to speak to momentarily, and then thinking a lot about the uncertainties that will arise over that plan implementation period so that we can be thoughtful in the infrastructure of the approach to adapt to changing circumstances. Phase 2 is where we'll really dig into a lot of the quantitative analysis, really modeling the different pathways out to 2035 and identifying the way in which we want to achieve decarbonization based on the principles that we develop in the decision-making framework. And then phase 3 is all about turning that plan into a publication, but then also being very deliberate about resourcing that plan, being careful and thoughtful about who owns which different parts of the plan among the ecosystem of actors that influence our ability to achieve emissions reductions. If you head to the next slide, this is a little bit more detail on how we want to talk to you throughout this process. We're here today to talk about the decision-making criteria and just introduce you to this plan process overall. We want to come back and share refinements on that criteria and go over our modeling approach once we've onboarded a consultant and refine that kind of project scope a bit more specifically. And then we also want to come back to you as we are drafting and as we are heading toward a final CECP to make sure that that's reflective of the feedback that you will hopefully have invested time and effort into providing us throughout this process. I say that this is a start. If you have questions, thoughts throughout the entire process, I'm happy to provide my contact information. It is important to me and the team and the administration that we develop a plan that is reflective of Massachusetts and the communities that live here. And so if there's other ways that you want to engage on this work, truly it is an open door to and an invitation to partner with us. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Oleander, who's going to walk through the decision-making work.
Thanks, Melissa. Before I do that, I just want to go back to and apologize to our online folks. I did not include you in talking about the breakout groups. You're very important to us. I see you on the screens, and you'll get to be in your own breakout group online. So thank you. The decision-making framework. This is something that really excites me about this version of the CECP process. It's really, it's a place of intersectionality. It's a place of understanding how do these decarbonization sectors interact with how people experience the world. And that is a really complicated place to be, and understanding it is not easy. And we're very excited to be soon be bringing on a vendor, as Melissa mentioned. We have an RFQ, a request for qualifications that are out at this moment, and we are hoping to have a vendor on soon who will help us create this decision-making framework. Next slide, please. This is the language that we put in our RFQ describing what we were hoping that this decision-making framework will capture. And we put in here some examples of some of the things that we're hoping that it will do, such as looking at health and equity and how external and internal stakeholders will be able to reconcile the impacts of a various policy or technology scenario onto these important cross-sector concepts. Next slide, please. So a note on the priorities associated with the decision-making framework. The first one is that obviously the goal of the CECP is to get us to net zero by 2050. The goal is decarbonization. However, we really want to understand and communicate that the priorities within the decision-making framework are concepts that directly enhance human well-being, that impact the way that we live our lives, that relate to how we live our lives. There are many topics that affect multiple sectors and improve effectiveness. For example, on the slide, load management for those who are in the decarbonization space we're talking about electrical load management. And these are some terms that if you come along with us on this CECP journey, you will learn about. Next slide, please. So there is a group of people called the Implementation Advisory Committee, the IAC, of whom Paula is actually a member. And we are very grateful to have the cross-seating happening. They are a group that works to help support us on the Clean Energy and Climate Plan, and we meet with them regularly. And we did an exercise with them in the beginning of December, asking them through a series of creative exercises, what are some of the priorities that you think that the decision-making framework needs to consider? On the top, these are traditionally the sectors that we have put our decarbonization work into: buildings, power, transportation, natural and working lands. And one of the things that we're holding is that these priorities that we have on the left are really cross-cutting through these sectors. And we're very curious as to how, when we are looking from the priority lens, how do we start seeing also the crossover, the intersection in each of the sector groupings? So we're really seeing this decision-making framework as an invitation into how we might approach some of these problems. So next slide, please. What we are asking of you all to do is to consider these 4 questions. Are there additional priorities missing from this list, or other ways you would suggest that we think about them? How would you suggest that we think about equity in the decision-making framework? There has been lots of comments about keeping equity as its own separate priority versus how we weave it in. What would it look like if the CECP was successful in implementing these priorities through decarbonization policy? What would it feel like if we were successful? And how do you see the state playing a role in the communities that you are in the world of decarbonization? So these questions we're going to keep up on the screens. In a moment, we will go into breakout groups. But before we do that, I want to leave a few minutes for council members to ask any questions that you may have for clarifying questions about these things, because if these are new concepts. So I just want to pause there for a moment and see if anybody has a question.
I have a quick question. I
Please.
just wanted to back up to, you had, in the previous slide, you had the priorities versus topics. And your
go back
priority
one slide,
definition was that the priorities have a direct impact on human well-being. And then there were other topics. And so I couldn't remember what that other slide looked like. So are these equity, public health, economic development, and affordability are described as, topics. And so I guess I'm just trying to get a refinement of the differentiation between priorities if we're going to be discussing them.
Sure.
So I'm clear in terms of how do you kind of distinguish between what you're trying to do, which is say priorities are different from just other topics.
Sure. I would say this is one of the this is one of the conversations we as a project management team have struggled with throughout the articulation of what we want this decision-making framework to be. Our distinction, and I should say our working distinction, and we're open to amending it, is that concepts like health, equity, affordability, these are things that everyone can kind of sit down and say, that directly affects me. I see that directly affecting my daily life. When it comes to things like the example put up there is load management, but you could make other, things that increase the efficiency of a policy or the effectiveness of a policy. That's not quite the same thing as what we're talking about in the context of priorities, because the priorities are really going to be represented in how we do decarbonization policy. Whereas when we think about something like load management, that might be a sort of technology or a policy decision that improves the effectiveness of the way that we deliver things, not the core version of how we deliver it with what end goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's starting to make more sense. I'm thinking of it more of strategically versus tactically, maybe.
Yeah, that's a great way to differentiate. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question from Pat Spence online.
Oh, great.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are
Wonderful.
you?
Good, thank you. Wonderful presentation. I'm fascinated with uncertainty analysis. What a field. And does this include also not only funding changes, federal changes, but does it also include technology changes? Can you just talk a little bit more about that? It's just fascinating to have that component in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually this was one of the conversations this is one of the concepts that stem from a conversation we had with another state peer who in their state climate plan had a whole uncertainty and whole other pathway analysis around delayed deployment of renewable technologies. And in the case of the latest federal administration coming in and dismantling many of the advancements in renewable energy technologies, they were suddenly able to pull out that pathway and have a much clearer way of how to adapt their entire strategy. And so when it comes to thinking about the types of uncertainty analysis that we're looking at, it's technology, it is cost, it is barriers of all sorts. But again, we're still in the design phase, so that's kind of the extent to which we've just defined that to date. So.
Well, that's kudos to you. Kudos to you.
I think we had Marcos and then Lydia.
So I had a question that was similar to what Madeline was asking in terms of distinguishing this slide and the priorities and the other topics. So if I understood you correctly, the priorities are kind of, the way I think about it is there's kind of means and there's ends.
Mm-hmm.
And so the efficiency and the load manager, that's a means to an end. But the ends are health and affordability and equity or, the other demands. But I want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly, that that's what you're after.
Yes, that is what we are after. I mean, the objective and our statutory obligation is emissions reduction, but we also recognize that we can't achieve emissions reduction equitably, thoughtfully, proactively, without also thinking about that intersection point with health and affordability and equity and all the other kind of priorities that we're still developing. And so they are end goals, but the way that we are thinking about them is that they need to be woven into the process, and that's what we're here to try to figure out how exactly to do that weaving. And so when we design a set of decarbonization policies, what does it mean to design a power sector suite of policies that reflect health considerations or affordability considerations or equity considerations? So, and I think this is definitely a sticking point and something that we're still working to articulate. But I think your note around ways or ends versus means is a good one. And I forget exactly the terms that you used, but it was also
strategy and tactics.
Strategy and tactics. But I think it's it's kind of these end objectives that would complement the decarbonization goal and need to be woven into the method in which we actually do that decarbonization work.
I'm a little confused about.
Sorry, Lydia, could you speak into the mic so they can hear you online as
Sorry.
well?
I'm a
Thank you.
little, could you speak a little more about these structures for engagement? Like the Implementation Advisory Committee, EJC, the Community Climate Advisory Council, and how do these interact?
Sure. Could we go back a few slides, please? Maybe two more. Oh, yeah, here we go. So these are a few of the existing entities that we have to work with as of right now. The Implementation Advisory Committee is an external group of folks who are appointed, similar to the EJ Council, for the purpose of supporting decarbonization in the state. You all are the EJ Council, and then I run a monthly group called the Community Climate Advisory Council that some folks here are on, that is a monthly group where we talk about various challenges regarding predominantly climate resilience, but starting to also talk about decarbonization and some of the ways that the state can make some adjustments in different programs and different approaches and make them easier to access. So at this point, these are 3 entities that exist that we have been working with. We've talked to the Implementation Advisory Committee, we've talked to the Community Climate Advisory Council, we're talking with you all, and once we have a vendor who comes on board, there will be other engagement points, but this is just our first pass for right now. Yeah, Caroline.
I was actually coming back to the modeling approach, which I think is really, really interesting. How are you thinking about the policy packages? Are they isolated to kind of climate and environmental policy, or are they broader than that? I'm just kind of thinking about like certain policies could attract load growth, and which would then have a knock-on impact into kind of, it's a little bit circular. So how are you thinking about those packages in particular?
It's a great question, and in conversations with a number of energy modelers, it's a very hard one. To your point, in some ways, many good policies are interdependent by design. They feed off of each other, and so we're not necessarily trying to isolate the impact of one particular policy on greenhouse gas emissions, because in some ways that may be short-sighted. I mean, I think this is all an approach that we're still refining. But when we think about, okay, there's a high electrification scenario, or within the building sector, what's the combination of standards and incentive programs that we need to put together, and let's come up with a feasible pathway and package of those policies to say, if we put this into our model, what kind of shakes out for all the different criteria in the decision-making framework, but also the technological benchmarks that we have to report on as well, including load, cost, all the other components. I don't know if that answered your question, but to start.
It helps. I wasn't like, is it externality or is it part of the package? Because you're right, those interdependencies are so complicated. They're hairy.
Yes. Yeah.
Sophia?
Thanks. My brain is kind of breaking thinking about the fact that it's been 5 years.
I
feel like we were in many meetings. Anyway, so 2 things. One is, we were in the height of the pandemic last time around. There was a lot of thinking about how do we engage folks on Zoom, and how do we get feedback from people when we can't gather in person. Obviously, things are a little bit different now. Some of us can safely gather in person, but a lot of the people who are most impacted by what we're talking about can't. So I'm wondering if you can say anything about how you're thinking about stakeholder engagement given this reality that we're in. But then the other question that I have is, to the extent that there was feedback that was given in the last plan that related to some of those priorities, in terms of equity and the other topics, whether those are things that the IAC or you are already talking about trying to implement so that we're not recreating the wheel. Because I guess my fear is we do all of this planning and then push comes to shove on EJ for people in terms of their real lives. They don't actually see it. Like, we can talk about all of these things and we can talk about policy suites, but affordability for who, economic opportunity for who, like, what do these things actually mean? And I guess just the last thing is just that if people show up and give input and then it's not reflected in the plan, they're not going to show up again. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now. But yeah, would love to hear how you're thinking about engaging with folks.
Yeah, I appreciate your soapbox. And there's like hours worth of conversation that could happen and all of that, and I hope that we get to have it. Some of the feedback from the past round of CECP has, particularly that came from the Climate Justice Working Group, is where the decision-making framework came from. So there's like direct tie there. And so that is also those parts of feedback are a part of the welcome packet for our vendor when they come on board. And I just also want to introduce and make a shout out to our other colleague who is here, Daniel Kerner, who is our manager of federal funds and decarbonization. Very complicated job, and he does a great efforts at it, and he has put together a fabulous welcome packet with lots of information and a lot of the different things that we are wrestling with. So that is one way that we really want to make sure that that feedback comes forward. In terms of the engagement, there's so many different things that we are thinking about around this, and one of them is, who is the audience of the CECP? Who is it directing? Because if we go out into a community event to talk about decarbonization, it has the potential to not resonate with people. And so that's part of what we're trying to do with the decision-making framework also, is what does it mean to lead with people's experience? Because one of the things that we need to figure out is how can a state plan lead to transformation of many, many people? And so that is beyond just focused engagement on specific groups. So there's many different things in there to unpack, and I invite all of you to help us figure out how to do that and unpack it and hold us accountable in the work. But we're very much thinking about it. Melissa, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I will just mention, I appreciate the mention of the prior work done. Our implementation advisory committee did develop a set of principles last time. And we did take a look at that, as Oleander mentioned, in developing kind of the reason why we have this decision-making framework. Because I think one of the challenges last time was, how do you actually operationalize these principles? What does that mean? And that's why we are trying to do this legwork now, to say equity is not a concept that deserves an isolated chapter. It needs to be woven throughout. And how exactly, we don't have the answers exactly how to do that. I think people do, communities do, and I think that's what we are trying to surface in this process. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Melissa. I think we're going to move us into the next step.
Great.
In the interest of time. And so we are going to try something new, and I'm going to explain it so that it is accessible for people online as well as in person, so that anyone who joins can join the conversation, but also with the language interpretation, we had to do a lot of thinking. So We are going to do 3 breakout groups, 2 in person and 1 remote. So anyone who joins virtual or in person can join a breakout group. We are going to pose these questions, and folks can choose one question or discuss all of them, although I don't think you'll be able to in 10 to 15 minutes. And so the questions are there additional priorities missing from the list or other ways you would suggest thinking about them? The second question is, how should we think about equity within the decision-making framework? The third question is, what would it look like if the CECP successfully implemented these priorities through decarbonization policy? And the last question is, how do you see the state's role in your communities within the broader work of decarbonization? So the groups can pick one of these questions or more for discussion. As a reminder, there's going to be 2 groups in person and 1 remote. We're going to ask each group to identify a note taker and someone that will report back. The breakout groups won't be recorded, but the report back when we come back together will be recorded and on the record. And so because we do have one person who I thought was going to be remote, and then another person who I thought was going to be in person, the remote group is the folks online, which I believe are Melissa, Pat, Cheryl, Dalila, or no, and Miles.
Yes. Cleela, Melissa, Miles, Pat.
And
Yeah. Oh, and Cheryl.
Cheryl, yep. And the 2 groups in person, we're gonna mix up the tables a little bit. So Marcos, Paula, Lydia, and myself. And then group 2 is Jen, Madeline, Caroline, and Sophia. So group 1 is Marcos, Paula, Lydia, and Maria Belén. And group 2 is Jen, Madeline, Caroline, and Sophia. And for folks who are in the audience in person with us, you can join whichever group you want. And we are going to be sitting in one of those 2 tables there. And we're going to be doing this for 15.
Yeah, I mean, you're the timekeeper.
40.
Sure, me.
How late can we stay, Erin, for the interpreters? I mean, is 8:30 okay?
Or 8:15.
Okay. All right, so let's say that 8:15 is our sort of end of the, just going a little bit over time here. So I'll do until 7:55, the conversations. And so again, for folks who join from the public remote, they can join the working group, the online working group.
Yeah.
Or breakout group.
Thank you. Good job.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to, for everyone online, please stay in Zoom. We're pretty much just going to stop hearing the in-room people so that we can think and talk to each other without several voices overlapping. Breakout rooms are not going to be recorded, so I'm going to turn off the recording now, but the report outs will be.
Okay, so we're going to, I'll facilitate the reporting back. And then I still want to make sure we have at least a couple of minutes of public comment at the very end. But we are running a little bit behind, so just keeping that in mind. Would folks online mind going first? If you had a note taker and person who would report back?
Yes. Okay, now I'm hearing an echo.
I noticed that as well.
You sound fine to us, or to me.
Okay, I can just keep going.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay. So our conversation focused a lot on the first couple of questions, I think, especially I think the heart of the conversation was that the ideas as presented did not feel that they were framed in ways that were going to be accessible to the average everyday folks that are in community. And so we talked a lot about how to, what would be opportunities to actually make them more accessible. So not using so much jargon and language, just actually the term decarbonization is not one that most people use and understand. So that was one example. So find ways to make this conversation actually open and available to people. We talked a lot about the fact that this conversation is also meeting people at a time when there's so many other concerns and priorities that feel really at the center and the forefront of their lives. And so if this is going to be successful, you have to figure out how to ensure that the plan feels relevant. And so affordability, energy affordability was one of the tracks that came up in that part of the conversation. And then there were a couple of mentions of things that could be added to the list of priority areas. So, where would air, water, or food, or would those be considered part of public health? Where does that fit on the list? There was a question about whether housing was on the list. Maybe that's in the buildings category, but maybe there's perhaps a way to make that more explicit. Yeah, I think those were the big themes. Anybody from the group want to add anything?
Great. Thank you, Kalila.
Yeah.
Now we'll go to the in-person groups, the two groups. So if you don't mind starting for the in-person groups, Marcos, for our group.
Yeah, so we had a diverse group, which is great. We had a lot of different folks from the committee and from the public participating. So we focused on how to think about equity in the decision-making framework, and so there were a number of themes that came out. One of the basic ones was, needing to define what you mean by equity. What are we talking about when we say that? We talked a lot about the benefits and how we would know that benefits are equitable, whether or not, and one way would be to look at how these benefits play out in different kinds of communities. So asking, we might make progress overall, but how does it play out in lower income Black and brown communities? I mean, are they advancing in the same way that other communities are? There was concern about, also thinking about how some of the options that people are seeing when it comes to decarbonization or energy efficiency don't always seem well matched to different circumstances. So some kinds of technologies and options like electric vehicles and or heat pump, heat pumps for homes are very expensive, and so these aren't realistic for a lot of households without a lot of assistance. And what do you do when you have different capacities to afford these things? Like, how do you measure whether or not you're doing something equitable when there's different ability to afford that? We also talked about the need to think about equity from both the benefit distribution, like who's getting gains and getting stuff they need, but also the burdens of the distribution. So looking at the equity of the burdens that people currently experience with the way that the energy infrastructure works, like who lives next to things that are polluting, as well as other kinds of burdens that might come from the new infrastructure that we're looking to build out. There's also a conversation too about, kind of going back to equity definition, but thinking about a broader perspective on equity that integrates our environmental quality around us. So even if it's not directly human health impacts, but the things that we care about in our immediate environment. So the quality of the forests and water bodies and the world around us, and that should be part of the consideration as well. I think I've hit most of them, but I invite anybody else on our group who wants to add to that.
That sounds comprehensive, accurate to me.
Okay.
All right, so we'll go to the last group of Jen, Madeline, Caroline, and Sophia. Whoever is the appointed person to report back.
That's me, Jen. So we decided to focus in on how do you see the state playing a role in your communities in the world of decarbonization. We were talking a lot about how do you adjust the prioritizations to meet the capacity of the state, and as well as thinking about how the proposed definitions mean a lot of different things to different people. So coming up with ways that the community can create definitions and a shared understanding together feels important. We spoke about the focus on modeling, and specifically modeling that is grounded not just in academic models, but ones that can acknowledge weaknesses and take into account the areas that the model can't hold. We discussed a bit about where is the pathway for communities to be a part of these conversations. Where can communities feel like they're a part of the solution? Recognizing that communities are not asking about frameworks and modeling, but really what it feels like and what it looks like on a granular level. So what can the state be doing to be responsive to micro issues? We're losing communities that, and we heard this example this evening again, when groups that are going to monthly meetings and not making any headway. We don't have a clear pathway in the state to where the state can have a response. There needs to be a mechanism where people don't have to come multiple times to an EJ council meeting, for example, just again and again, and not having a response on a state level. We talked about policy interventions that will actually support folks on the ground. That often we're seeing that it's the local policies that ultimately make some of those decisions, and that we have an opportunity to imagine what this could be. And I welcome anyone else from our group.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Are there any sort of final thoughts that you both want to, or should we? I saw you taking notes, so I know you are going to take it back.
Just to say thank you. Thank you all online here for being a part of the conversation with us. It was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Oleander. Thank you, Melissa. And now we're going to move to public comment. Again, please just keep in mind that we are running behind. And so if you could please raise your hand virtually or use a Q&A feature for folks that are remote. For folks that are in person, you can physically raise your hand. But we'll go to the remote room first.
Yes, so I don't see any, oh no, there's a hand up. All right. Cable Ames, you should be able to unmute and talk.
Hi all, Cabell Eames here.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay, that's all right. I wanted to, first of all, thank you all for this thoughtful discussion. It was wonderful to be a fly on the wall and listen in on how you all were thinking about these goals and how you're gonna roll them out. I just wanted to say one thing, which is this is an overall quality of life that we're discussing. And I think the more we can speak about it in mainstream, Main Street language is going to be a lot, it's going to go further because there's just so much disinformation out there already about affordability and why our bills are so high. And I think if you can, sorry, my dog, meet people where they are when it comes to how much their bills are, what they're going through, and try to make this a solution going forward. I think that maybe there'll just be more buy-in, because right now it's just really difficult to have those conversations at any level when we're talking about getting people off of fossil fuels because of all the disinformation. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kabul.
Thank you. We now have some Q&A that I will read aloud. All right, from David Dow. Why doesn't the Massachusetts Ocean Management Plan consider climate change effects in the coastal ocean or environmental justice consequences of federal denial of EPA endangerment effects of climate change on EJ populations? David goes on to ask, does the Clean Energy and Climate Change Plan include models based on, I'm going to say, adaptive, ecosystem-based approaches on effects on wild places and wild things? The 2021 Sierra Club comments on revising the Massachusetts Ocean Management Plan include adaptive ecosystem-based management plan outline. He also says, on Cape Cod, there are 48 communities of faith engaged in climate change education and action on the ground, which could help with communications on the Clean Energy and Climate Action Plan. And then Kanan Thiruvangadam, I apologize if I mispronounce your last name, asked, how does the 2025 actuals, and I believe this is for the climate action, climate energy and clean energy and climate change plan, excuse me. How does the 2025 actuals compare to the mandate set for 2025?
And Kessel, I think there are also two questions in the chat or comments. Catherine Rodriguez says, we need someone in our government to help us. Our neighborhood has been reaching out for over 10 years and still we live with air, noise, light, excessive heavy truck traffic here in the Ware section of Taunton, Mass. Please help. And Juji Diamondstone says, this is an interesting and promising framework. Apologies, I have another meeting. I look forward to reviewing the recording.
Thank you. I think the climate team wants to respond, perhaps.
Thank you. I want to specifically respond to the 2025 actuals because your timing could not be more perfect. Actually, tomorrow we intend to release a report card, which is something that we publish annually that assesses progress toward our climate mandates. And so while we can't, from an emissions inventory perspective, so our Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection maintains our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. The data to produce those numbers is typically on about a 2-year lag, so we won't be able to officially state compliance with the 2025 limit. That's actually required by, I believe it's July 2027, that we are required to state compliance, but tomorrow's report card will be able to illustrate some of the details around the technological benchmarks I mentioned earlier, the metrics of how we assess progress along the way, and so you'll be able to see a bit more detail tomorrow. So stay tuned on that.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Kessel? Is anyone in person want to comment? Okay.
Oh,
all right. Yes.
Really quick, I'm sorry. So in response to Oleander, someone asked, where can I see the details released?
So it's coming out tomorrow. Melissa, do you want to tell how or where?
I'm getting my steps in, so thank you for making me walk up here. I was saying there's going to be a press release as well as it's going to be available if you search Clean Energy and Climate Metrics, Climate Report Card, Massachusetts, all of that should bring you to the newly released one. You can actually see prior versions of it if you just Google Massachusetts Climate Report Card.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So our next meeting is going to be April 9th, and it will be in Orange. And as a reminder, please complete the evaluation online at the end of the Zoom webinar. And can I get a motion to adjourn? Anyone?
I'll make a motion.
All right. We don't want to. Caroline, and then who's second? Sorry.
Second.
Miles, second. Any discussion? All right, Kessel, can we do a roll call on adjourning the meeting? In favor, in oppose, or abstaining?
Yes, we'll do a roll call to adjourn. Marcos Luna,
Yes.
Kalila Barnett,
Yes.
Lydia Lau,
Yes.
Jen Salonetti,
Yes.
Madeline Fraser Cook,
Yes.
Cheryl Hawley,
Yes.
Caroline Hahn,
Yes.
Sophia Owen,
Yes.
Paula Garcia,
Yes.
Melissa Ferretti,
Yes, thank you.
thank you, Patricia Spence,
Yes.
Peter Matthew, Miles Gresham,
Yes.
Arlene Marois, and Maria Belen Power.
Yes.
And with 13, the meeting is adjourned.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
the time is 8:16. Meeting is officially adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Peace, Ganache.